Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. Welcome to this board meeting on April the 11th. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Yes. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And I think we're going to start out an executive session. So if someone would like to make a motion to recess into executive session, that would be appreciated.
I make a motion
to recess into executive session to discuss personnel.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, roll call.
Mr. Todd?
Yes.
Chair?
Yes.
Flynn? Yes. Estelle?
Yes.
Keller?
Yes.
Todd?
Yep.
Dr. Lee? Yes.
All right. We are in executive, and I think we are moving to a conference room.
Yep.
And we have reached the point for public comments. I don't think there were any written public comments this time. But the school board welcomes questions, ideas, and comments from persons in attendance. Members of the audience may comment during the public comment portion of the meeting. We ask the comments be limited to 3 minutes in order to finish the agenda in a timely fashion. And we ask that the comments begin by providing your name, address, and the school district in which you reside. And we only have one person, Lauren Ruma. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Ruma. I live at 751 Edgegrove. My children go to Avery Elementary. I spoke at the previous board meeting. To recap, my children were denied bus service over 0.1 mile. They cross an arterial roadway at the intersection of Laclede and Marshall. Through section 167.231, the Webster Groves School Board could be providing transportation to pupils who cross hazardous road conditions and provide them safety, as the surrounding school districts like Kirkwood have done. Since the previous meeting, I've met with the interim chief of police of Webster Groves. I've spoken with the engineer through St. Louis County Department of Transportation. The chief of police let me know that my address is too far from the school for school road signs and school speed limits. The engineer for St. Louis County let me know that they will not be putting up pedestrian walking signs. Also, he let me know he wouldn't even restripe the crosswalks because there's too much volume of traffic in that intersection to have his workers in that intersection Monday through Friday. It has to be budgeted for a weekend job to the volume of traffic in that intersection. He doesn't put his own workers out there. And he told me if my children were struck by a car, it would be due to driver neglect. I have truly exhausted all my resources to try and keep my children safe. I am currently appealing to you as a school board, as this is my only viable option. Knowing thus far, I've also had pushback that's been related to cost. So I reached out to a leader in financial services to help me look at the Webster Groves School District budget. Per the Webster Grove School District budget, year-to-date transportation expense through February has been $550,000. If the monthly expense rate holds, this will equal approximately $100,000 for the complete school year, versus their budget of $1,157,000. That has a projected savings versus budget for this school district of $400,000. That is the surplus you have in your budget. So let's say if you decide to provide transportation for pupils in unsafe areas, let's say that would increase by 1% annually. That will only take $8,000 out of that budget. Let's say that would increase by 5%. That would only take out $38,000 out of that $400,000 surplus you have. So 38 or 8, that's 1%, that's 5%. That's even if it costs that, because you gotta remember, I'm at 0.9. You have to go near my home to hit a mile. And the district's not that big. So I know there's a surplus of seats on that bus because only 7 children are utilizing that bus currently. I know you have a surplus of budget. So I'm, again, reaching out to the Webster Grove School District to do as similar districts have done around us. You have a surplus of spots on the bus. You have a surplus of budget. Please think about providing safety to children crossing these roads. Thank you guys for your time once again. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for being here. All right, moving on to celebrations from the board.
I'm happy to kick us off. I just had an opportunity to go to Edgar Road last Friday. Sorry, the dates are running in my head. They had an author visit. Liz Kleinrock, who wrote the children's book, co-wrote the children's book with Joanna Ho, Eyes That Weave the World's Wonder, came and did an author talk for the students, the entire school, K through 5. And then I got to see the principals get pied in the face because the kids raised all the money in their penny wars. But just wanted to just shout out to Edgar for being ahead of May and Asian Appreciation Month, but also highlighting a story so that kids in our community who have adopted families, adoption stories, could also see themselves in text.
Let's see, there's a couple things I have. So one, we had Read, Write, and Run is something that Go St. Louis does. And it's kind of tied to like a marathon theme where you have to read 26 books, do 26 good deeds, and run 26 miles over a course of time, not all in one day. And there were 41 students that did that, I know, at Edgar Road, and so I'm sure around the district there may have been other students that did that, but hats off to those students and those families for doing that, because it's a lot of work, and I'm sure all those families are really proud of their kiddos. The Eclipse Day was really fun. I'm sure other folks might talk about that, but I saw several of the administrators there, and it was just a really good time, and a lot of families there watching and seeing the nearly total eclipse. And then we went to Jeff City on Tuesday and met with quite a few representatives. So I wanted to thank several of those executives, several of those representatives, just Hayden, Berger, Castile, Lewis, and Haley for giving us their time, because that's all we can ask for, and we didn't ask for too much time, and it was great that they sat with us and spoke to us about some of the bills that we'll speak to later, and Representative Dahl as well. That's it.
Alex, I just wanted to add one name to the Read, Write, Run, especially at Edgar Road. Colleen Schrappen just does such a wonderful job with that. And I believe the district paid for, what do you call them? Eclipse safety glasses, and just thank you, not only for those, but to all the teachers who are, I was reminded when I saw a Facebook memory of a teacher from, I guess, what was it, almost 6 or 7 years ago, and making sure all the kiddos kept their eyes safe as they were looking upward at this incredible phenomenon. Science is really cool, and it's awesome that we can get kids out there and make sure they're safe.
Absolutely.
I actually am looking forward to prom this weekend. I'm sorry. I want to celebrate our seniors and all of the things that they're going to be doing. This is a very special evening, very memorable. I just hope that they will all be safe. And they will have a beautiful day, absolutely. So that's all I'll say.
I'd like to celebrate an 8th grade field trip that I had the opportunity to attend with some of our Hickson students last week, or maybe the week before. But it was a full day, almost, field trip to the Missouri History Museum. We took a bus tour to see some historical landmarks around the city. And then we had the opportunity to go to the Missouri History Museum's research library. And do a little project using some World's Fair artifacts. And so all of this tied into the 8th grade World Civilizations class, and it was just a great day and great hands-on experience for our kids, and allowing history to sort of jump off the screen or out of their pages and kind of get to see real life and connect it to our local community too, which is great. So thanks to everyone who coordinated that.
There we go. So echo a lot of things that said. Derek, I'm going to try to not say a whole lot that you're going to say. I'm assuming you're going to talk about the Most Scholar Awards and the student on KSDK and all that fun stuff. But a couple of things that I want to point out. A few of us did attend the soft grand opening of the Frick Theater that happened on April 1st, which was just fantastic. I'm so excited for the community to be able to see that space. I'm excited for the students to be able to get in there and use that multi-purpose space. It's going to be able to be utilized for so many different performances and competitions and activities that it's going to be great for the high school and for the community both. So just again, thank you to the Fricks for that donation and helping driving that process and make that happening, because it's going to be an incredible asset for the district. A couple of other things just quickly. Both of my children are participating this year in sports through the district, which I think is great. There's not a ton of that across districts in St. Louis County, and I know that we're trying to build that up, but with a daughter that's doing the basketball program through the high school coaches, and my son is playing flag football, which is going to be fascinating to see how he does in that scenario. But that, with Coach White's sort of organizing that for the elementary schools, that's going to be a fantastic opportunity for our kids to be able to engage in sports at an earlier age. So I'm excited and want to celebrate those coaches and staff for extending those opportunities to some of our younger kids. And then just finally, I'm the liaison to the foundation. As you guys know, teacher grants have been given. The ceremonies with the big checks have happened, so be on the lookout for the videos that are going to be posted online over the next couple of weeks, because there's several really good things that are going to be coming with those grant checks. So be on the lookout for those.
I will just add two things. We also had the opening of Copland Field, which looks unbelievable. It was capped off by the baseball team having a really good game and beating Pattonville. So just a really fun day. And again, we got lucky. It was a really beautiful day, unlike the original scheduled. So that was exciting. And then I had the opportunity last night to attend the Hudson PTO meeting. And just by chance, one of the speakers was Denise Foley, who's one of the second grade teachers. And she was talking about the Litzinger Road Ecology Center, which I had literally just been talking about that morning, because it is such an amazing place. And so I was just really excited to hear that we're still going there and taking advantage of all that program has to offer, because it is really a great asset to be able to our community that they offer that. So that's all I have. Celebrations from administrators.
Am I good? Oh, sorry. President Zoll, Vice President Keller, members of the board, thanks for having me tonight. Hold on one second. I forgot. First thing I want to mention is our Inspires Awards recipients. It was the second year we've been doing this as a district, and this is to honor those individuals, both employees and members of the community, parent volunteers, who inspire others. Has made a long-term commitment to the district. So we have 9 recipients this year. They'll be honored at the employee and really our recognition reception on May 7th this year. But it was a great mix of teachers and a few administrators and parent and community volunteers also. And Denise Foley is on that list, as you mentioned earlier.
Well deserved.
Yeah, and all of them are great. And it was really fun just walking around and presenting them with these awards. They really felt honored, and you could tell that. A lot of emotions during those times. Next, as you mentioned, solar eclipse was great weather for it on Monday. We were over all around, really, throughout the district. We were able to. The nice part, I think, that many of our schools invited families in, and I know that's a unique thing. Not a lot of districts did that. And so I think that was a great opportunity. And I also want to definitely recognize Brian Keller, who is our science curriculum coordinator, and he did so much work. And me asking him, hey, what's the details? How does this work? You have glasses for everybody. And they had more than enough glasses, more than enough activities and lessons planned for students so that the teachers participated in over the not just that day, but in the days before too. And we were thankful that weather turned out really well for it. Next, you mentioned the Missouri Scholars 100. So Claire Miller and Samuel Hewitt were both recognized. And the Missouri Scholars 100 is only 100 students throughout the entire state are recognized with this award. And so for two of them to come from one district, from Webster, I think really says a lot and means a lot for that to happen. And they are great people as well. And we'll try to get them into an upcoming board meeting to formally recognize them as well. I know they've been here before, earlier in the year. You mentioned Frick Theater. So Frick Theater is not quite ready to open just yet, but we were able to celebrate sort of like a preview tour with Barbara Frick and her son and then some other of her friends to attend. It was a week ago, I think last Monday they came. And Dr. Irvin was there, had some teachers and also students that were able to sit down and talk with not only Barbara, but also some of her former classmates and friends from when she was 5 and current and friends now too, to talk about how they're going to use that space. So that was really good. The intention is that it's used often, and we're really grateful for Barbara and Robert Frick's support on this. Then, like you mentioned too, Coppin Field, the weather was great for the second grand opening. The nice thing was just seeing the ball players, not only baseball, but softball players who were on the field before, practicing on the field. And, we have that additional space next to Copland that's there now that wasn't there before, that we're able to have more practices, more activities, more eclipse watching that was happening last Monday. And we talked to some students about it, and they were just really happy. And at the time, they're looking forward to actually playing on this turf because there was less issues on turf than there were on the natural grass, and kind of the divots and the rocks and the bumps that you might get from a ball, you kind of know where it's coming from now. So that was really great to see that and be with the students who were there. And then finally, this was just announced, I think yesterday or yesterday. We were going to publicize it later, but the district was honored with our second consecutive long-term bond rating of AA+ by Standard & Poor's Global Rating Service. So specifically, I want to mention what was in the S&P report. It was that Webster's good financial management policies and practices with a strong management team, including the use of multiple enrollment scenarios and financial projections, outside sources for enrollment assumptions, and monthly budget to actual reports presented to the board, and a conservative budget practice contributed to the AA+ rating. So we'll have more details on that a little bit later as we publicize, but we're really grateful for all of that, and especially for Pam and our finance committee's work and just being fiscally responsible for the district. That's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, board calendar, anything?
No updates. Big events are happening around the district. This doesn't encompass all of those, but at the next meeting, we'll talk about graduation, which is just around the corner. Super exciting.
It is almost that time. There were some board policies for first read, so hopefully you had a chance to read them. If you have any questions, you can reach out to anybody on the board, on the policy committee, which would be Alan, Keita, myself. I think that's it. But they are in there for you to peruse. Legislative update.
Yeah, thank you. We've been, just been a lot happening, as always, in the springtime in Jefferson City. And I'm just going to share real briefly, and then give some of the board members who attended MSBA's Advocacy Day on Tuesday the opportunity to also share. But we have, as you know, we've been trying to do a better job of informing our community of legislation through pushing out information to people who signed up for it. whether that's just what's happening this week in Jefferson City or giving them alerts as to things that are moving in Jefferson City. We also are hosting, we've hosted 2 in-person gatherings. We'll host our 3rd in a couple weeks. The last one's in a couple weeks. And Dr. Hockman, Jerry Hockman, has been the one who's been providing, at no cost, a lot of support in helping us to inform people and including facilitating those sessions. He's also the one who's helping the school board PLC group. Those of you that participate in those legislative webinars, you'll see him on there. Again, former superintendent who's just a big believer in all kids deserve the best education. So, just from a legislative update, and
Can
I'll
I
just
ask one question about
Sure.
that? Are we still doing that with other districts, or is it just Webster at this point?
Just Webster at this point, yeah. All the districts are gathered on the PLC, the board leadership, but yeah, at this point. The big bill that's been generating the most discussion, and I won't speak much on it, is Senate Bill 727, which is an education omnibus bill that includes so many different things. There's a lot in there, and I've spoken on it before, so I won't go into a lot of there's stuff in there that we feel is good, not just for Webster and public ed, but then there's a lot of stuff in there that we feel is harmful for public ed and Webster Groves. And so again, it encompasses a lot from a voucher, increasing a voucher system. It has charter schools in there in Columbia Public School Systems, Boone County. It's got supporting homeschool, providing money to homeschool families for reading. It's got using not just the current system of ADA, of how we collect money on the formula, is enrollment and attendance, and this one is focused on enrollment, which again, that would be a good thing for public schools, especially as we've seen attendance decline in schools across the country post-pandemic. So in short, there's recently also a letter that was put together by a number of different groups. It includes teacher associations, it includes MSBA, it includes Association of Superintendents, to the legislators, just vocalizing the concerns regarding it. And one of the primary reasons for the concerns is the ability to fund all that is within there. So with that, I'll pause and give Tara, Alan, and Alex and I went down to Jeff City, got in our car and went. Joe, of course, is there. So I'll turn the floor over to you all if you want to share anything.
Yep, I think it was a really great day. We had the opportunity, like Alex mentioned, do we have 5 meetings? 5. We met with 5 representatives, and it was encouraging. 2 were strongly not supportive of the bill for the concerns that you just mentioned, which are financial concerns. You know, there are good things in the bill, but there's nothing that indicates how those good things would be funded, which leads us to be concerned that they actually won't happen, or that cost would then be transferred to our local school districts, which is not great either. But I thought it was a great day. I don't know if you want to add anything, Alex, Alan.
Here we go. Yeah, I'll just add briefly, I thought, like you, encouraging conversations. I wasn't sure exactly what to expect going in, but I thought the conversations were encouraging. Shout out to MSBA for their help putting it together, and just for their advocacy day in and day out in the Capitol on the behalf of school boards and school districts across the state, because it's a big task and a big lift. So thankful for them to be there. And I just think the other thing that sort of struck me as I reflected back on the day is, and the meetings that we had, the representatives that we spoke with that had some sort of connection directly to education were the ones that were most adamantly opposed. There were a couple of others that were not sure, a couple of others that were on board, but the ones that had a direct connection, either as a former teacher or educator or administrator or those types of activities, that understood sort of how education works and how public ed works, were the ones that were most opposed. So I think that just tells me we need to continue to educate the other representatives on education on what education is and sort of how it works and how what they do can affect it. And hopefully we can continue to make progress.
All right, well, thanks to all of you guys for being there to advocate. All right, I think we are on to evaluation of the math resources.
Curriculum coordinator. So
Curriculum, oh, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Dr. Sandy Wiley-Skinner.
Hello. Hello, and thank you all for the opportunity to present this to you. We are actually here, we were approached by the curriculum coordinator group, which is a very good group of educators that are committed to supporting our teachers in their work and just really thinking about how we support them and compensate them and what their structure look like. And so we met with them a couple of times this year in order to really talk through the process of their work and what's best kind of for them. And so as a byproduct of that meeting, they identified a couple of areas of concern that they wanted us to address, in addition to talking about how their year looks. And so for your knowledge, our curriculum coordinators, they are here during the school year, but they also work very heavily in the summer with professional development, with bringing on new teachers, with ensuring everybody has new curriculum resources and everything that they need. And so our current structure for them had them really off in the summer, which is one of their busiest times in the summer. And so really realizing the true impact of their work and needing more flexibility throughout the year, we really had to process through what would kind of work better for them as they're supporting teachers in the classroom. Their downtime is really around the time when school starts because everybody's up and running at that point, right? Or in like the month of October when teachers are kind of cruising. And so the flexibility that they need in order to effectively do their job was one of the major points that they had. Very strong group of people that are very caring and knowledgeable former teachers that know the work and do the work with teachers every day. So we were happy to sit down and talk with them and process through. So as a byproduct of that, and also because they are not members of the bargaining unit that's just newly established, but their salary and a couple of other things would be impacted by that bargaining unit that's not really there to represent them. It just really made sense to pull them from that component being paid as a teacher under those realms, that realm, because again, their work and their impact and their voice is not necessarily heard at that table. So we established a structure with them that we have really with our administrators and support staff, where we sit with them, talk with them, identify concerns, and then talk about salary with them. And so as a result of that, what we are presenting to you tonight is an opportunity to move them from a teacher salary structure pay so that they are actually paid on a model, a salary structure model that's similar to administrators. They are the only group really, when we sit back and think about it, that are not on that similar path of being compensated. And so what we did is typically what we do for administrators. We found comparative salary of other curriculum coordinators in our St. Louis County area. We were able to identify that, and we created a model for them very similar to what we do for administrators in order to ensure that they are being paid competitively with their peers in the St. Louis County areas, if that makes sense. And so what we're hoping to present to you tonight is the opportunity to shift them, because again, scheduling conflicts, to shift them from just working the typical 9 months with some additional days to a 12-month calendar, which would afford them more flexibility throughout the year to take the time and to be available for teachers, as well as shifting them from a teacher salary structure. Again, they're not represented by the NEA group, but to move them from there to a more comprehensive compensation package where they are being compared to their peers, and we can move forward with supporting them in that realm. So in the board packet, you'll see a draft of their compensation model, which looks very similar to the administrator compensation model that we've been using for a period of time. They too would be paid at 5% above the median compared to their peers, just as all of our other employee groups. And so again, the major shift would be going from 9 months, 9.5 months to 12 months, and then being paid on a different compensation structure. I know I said a lot, used a lot of vocabulary. Are there any questions or wonderings about this recommendation? And I'm talking about them as if some of them are not here, so I just want to say that. So Pam Washington, which is our gifted coordinator, and then Susan Bergman, which is our math coordinator. There's 2 more that are not here, Brian Keller, as well as Kara Mueller. That's the team of 4 curriculum coordinators that we're discussing tonight. So any questions about that? Or John, want to
Can I
share?
just add one thing?
Yeah.
Just again, I think simplified too, is that what we've tried to do with every single staff member in our school district is pay them comparatively to their peers across St. Louis County, whether it's a teacher, administrator, whether it's somebody that's a facility tech. That's what we do, is we look for comparables. And so this is a group that hadn't been paid compared to their comparables. They'd been paid compared to teachers in a classroom, and it's a different role. And so we felt there was different things that were moving us, as Dr. Wiley Skinner articulated, that this made sense to move them to something that was comparable. So.
Sandy, I just had a quick wondering, do we still have a science coordinator, or is that a split role?
It's a split role. So Brian Keller is science/social studies.
So would we have him still split in that, or would that
He
go
would still
into
be
2
split.
different roles? Okay.
Yeah.
I think I think this is a great thing. Or I think one of the last, to be honest. When I came here as an employee, I was surprised at the model because the sheer amount of work. Nobody works 9 months. So it's essentially, we've gotten like lots of months of labor for free. So I think thank you for bringing this. Thank you for acknowledging. They are the backbone of curriculum and supporting teachers. And as we look to the future, we keep having, lots of people are having these conversations about teacher retention. The biggest part, and today leading a group of educators, one of the teachers shared her self-care, like we need to move away from thinking that self-care is a massage or a cup of coffee. It is different for each individual, and she just reminded me in our session today, like her self-care is being treated as a professional, having people pour into her professionally, being able to go and be a learner and be developed. And in districts, the curriculum coordinators are those key people. They help. Jason by himself cannot do this work alone. You need a team, but that team also needs to be trusted.
Yes.
So that teachers can be vulnerable as learners and model the same thing that we want our kids to have. So I just want to commend the team for thinking about really the last people, the piece of the puzzle, but they're the invisible people behind the scene, and people do not see their hustle and how hard they work. So
I agree.
Kudos to you all.
Thank you for that. I agree totally.
Any other questions from the board?
I just have one. So it sounds like my first question was, do other districts have this model? So it sounds like we're the last to pay them in this way. The second question, either for you, Dr. Wiley, or for Pam, just sort of what the budget impact is for next year, if we know that at this point.
Good evening. Looking at this, their raises will be just a little bit higher than our other groups to get them aligned, since they weren't 260 days. And we looked at the model. The employees at the other districts, as you mentioned, were most of them 260 days. It's going to be about an 8.9% increase for their salaries. So overall, when you look at, there's just 4 of them, it's a small impact to the budget, with, I think, which will have, though, a large outcome.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I will motion to approve the curriculum coordinator salary structure and steps for the 24-25 school year.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to hear from Susan Bergman about our math resources.
Yeah, good evening to all of you. I'm excited to have my colleague Susan here this evening. She is going to be sharing a follow-up to our math program evaluation from last year. One of the recommendations was to review and then recommend a new math resource for our teachers to use. It's been some time since we've had a chance to review our current elementary math resource. And so tonight she's going to walk us through that process and then ultimately what the recommendation is going forward. And at the end, we'll be seeking your consideration and approval of the recommended resource and the overall budget amount that's requested to make that purchase.
Thank you for your time. So yes, I'm here to just recommend the resource that we spent an entire year looking at. We reviewed 25 different elementary math resources that are available right now. Our recommendation, and this is kind of, I guess, the punchline, the end of the presentation, but our recommendation is that we purchase illustrative mathematics through Imagine Learning, and I'll kind of talk about why it's got kind of two pieces there. Jason kind of stole my first two slides. So yes, the rationale behind this this work was because last year about this time I presented to you all the math program evaluation, and from that program evaluation, one of the recommendations was that we look at our elementary resource, consider adopting something else that's better aligned to the state standards, while still offering the opportunities for kids to collaborate, play games. That's something that our elementary kids love doing in math, and seeing themselves as math capable learners. So the process that we went through for determining this resource, we spent an entire year looking at this, lots of hours over the summer last year, and then during the school year we visited districts and we met many times after school. We started by just establishing our norms and determining what our selection criteria was, so that we had a kind of a checklist of what we were looking for in the resource before we actually looked at any resources. And I'll share that selection criteria in just a minute. We reviewed ed reports. I'll talk a little bit about what that tool is. And like I said, there was 25 available elementary resources. After meeting several times last summer, we narrowed that down to 6 resources that we wanted to look at a little bit more in depth. And for each of those 6 resources, we met with each of the publishers, the sales representatives, talked to us about those resources. And then probably the most powerful piece of the entire process was visiting area school districts. So we visited Pattonville, Fort Zumwalt, and Clayton. They were gracious enough to allow about 15 of us into a classroom to watch one teacher teach a classroom of students and see how the resource played out. And then they also gave up some of their time to talk to us. We developed a bunch of questions that we had for them, and they talked to our whole committee. So they were really great hosts, and it was nice to be able to see the resources being used with children in classrooms. From there, we just determined that illustrative mathematics from Imagine Learning seemed like the best resource, but we wanted to test it out in some of our classrooms. So then we began piloting, and we ended up having about 20 classrooms across the district pilot illustrative math. So this is our selection criteria. I'll just highlight a few things. We were looking for real-world application. We were looking for materials that prioritized cultural, racial, and gender diversity and support our equity resolution. We were looking for materials that offer differentiation opportunities and that the resources were accessible to all. We looked for things that promoted flexibility, so flexibility in thinking with numbers. That means flexibility with numbers, flexibility with strategies, flexibility with the models that you use to communicate your mathematics, and flexibility in how you communicate your understanding of mathematics. And one of our biggest things is persevere in problem solving. That's in our curriculum documents. That's one of the mathematical practices, a habit that we work on in our teaching and in our classrooms. We were looking for rich problem solving and a foundational base that had that vertical alignment. So we used this kind of as a checklist as we were looking at all 25, and then as we narrowed it down to 6, we looked at these even more in depth. We used Ed Reports as one of our main research tools. Ed Reports looks at all the resources that are available and gives it has a huge rubric that it uses, and it looks at each piece of the rubric and examines the resource, and then it gives feedback on that. One of the things that I really like about Ed Reports is that it looks at the focus and coherence of the math resource first, then it looks at the rigor and the math practices second, and it will not evaluate a resource based on usability until it's met those first 2 criteria. And that might sound kind of weird, but it's very easy to pick up a resource and look at it and say, ooh, this is really easy to use as a teacher, or you see a lot of the bells and whistles that come with a program, and sometimes you get a little swayed by that. And so Ed Reports doesn't look at those things until they've met focus and coherence and rigor and math practices. And so that makes it a really key resource to use when it's a great tool to use. One of the pieces that Ed Reports does look at, these are two of its indicators, are related to equity and inclusion. So indicator 3R looks at the balance of images and the information about the people, making sure that all demographics and physical characteristics are represented. And then also indicator 3T looks at, does it encourage teachers to draw upon students' cultural and social backgrounds to facilitate learning? And so for illustrative math, this is two of the quotes that come out of that Ed Reports tool on the equity and inclusion, and that's that they found a balance of images and that various demographics were represented, and that there's people from many ethnicities in a positive, respectful manner. They're portrayed in a positive, respectful manner with no demographic bias. This is an example. This is just the kind of the overview report, and then it has a much more detailed report from Ed Reports. And you'll see for focus and coherence, it got 14 out of 14 of the indicators. For rigor and mathematical practices, it met 18 out of 18 of the indicators, and that was on grades kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. It met all of the indicators for focus and coherence and rigor and mathematical practices. And then it looked at that gateway 3, which is the usability. It missed a few points there, but that was on, it's in the assessment indicator, but really that was after you give a student an assessment, what kind of suggestions does the resource give you for supporting that student? And it didn't feel like it was strong enough there. However, they are coming out, illustrative math is coming out with version 360, that's what they're calling it. It's the updated version, and they've addressed that. It just hasn't been reviewed. So they've added that in as a component, and it will likely meet all of 100%, which is very unusual for Ed Reports. It does not give 100% very often at all. Okay, so I'm saying illustrative math, which by the way, it can be pronounced both ways. It can be illustrative math or illustrative math, but the authors all say illustrative math. So I've transferred over to illustrative math, even though for a while I said illustrative. So it's a nonprofit organization that wrote this, and they've released it as an open curriculum resource. And so any publisher can pick it up and then sell the print materials and the digital materials. So illustrative math is out there. You can actually access it for free. Anyone can find the content of illustrative math. We found that Imagine Learning seemed to have the best package for the print materials and for the digital materials. So the content is not changed no matter which publisher you buy it from. And we like that it is from a nonprofit organization, and that they're there just to develop math resources that are good for all students. Some of the things that we liked about it coming from Imagine Learning was the problem-based learning, the inclusivity. They have, in Imagine Learning, they have these really great learning progression videos that they made for every single unit. So teachers, when they get into the unit, they can read about what's coming up in this unit, but also they can watch a video that shows them the models, that shows them the thinking. It's about a 2-minute video, but it gives them all the background that they need to have for that unit. And that's not in any of the other publishers. It has a family support website and videos. Those are free to access for parents. It has both print and digital access for all of their resources. It has hands-on centers, but also digital centers, so kids can play a game face-to-face, or they can play a game on a computer if that just seems like better for the classroom environment at the time. It comes with these Inspire Math videos, which are aligned to science. So it's like a science video about something science, and then how math serves that science standard. And then it integrates with Canvas and Clever. The total cost of it is $61,450. That includes 105 teacher editions, all the student licenses, professional development from the company, unit planning guides, and then the buildings will purchase the consumable workbooks at $32 per student. Just to give you a little bit of framework, the last time I presented on an elementary math resource, the cost or the purchase of that was in 2008. it's been a while. I pulled back up, it wasn't even in Google, that was like PowerPoint slides. I pulled back up those PowerPoint slides, and at the time, the cost of investigations was higher than this cost. So that's kind of in 15 years, we've actually been able to lower the cost of it. We'll also buy additional manipulatives and center kits from Hand to Mind. That's another nice thing about this being an open source resource, is that there's a lot of different places that we can access for resources that support this. And finally, I just want to thank all the committee members who helped us, again, stay after school to talk about all of this and to visit the other schools and to develop and really spent a lot of time diving into math resources that are available for elementary students. What questions do you have?
You want to go?
Sure. So I have two questions. One, you talk about the usability. But with the 20 classrooms that tried it out, how did the teachers feel about the ease of use and the PD behind it to get up and going?
Yeah, they really liked it. It comes pretty much, so another nice thing about it is because it's not copyrighted, you can print in-house anything that you want to. So they like the fact that it's all like right there for them to, anything that they need to plan is available to them. And also already has slides, and the slides that they have, they're not just directions for the students on how to do whatever the math or the activity is, but it's a lot about building a mathematical community. And so how do we interact mathematically with one another? How do I learn from your math thinking? And that was a piece that they really liked as well.
And then one other question I had was just around the cost. Is it a subscription? Like, are we paying that annually, or is it a one-time fee?
That's a great question. So the teacher editions is a one-time fee. The professional development is a one-time fee. The unit planning guides is a one-time fee. The student consumable workbooks from them are $32, and then the online student licenses are $19 per student. However, we don't have to purchase those workbooks every year. That's an option. And there's the option to make those copies in-house if we prefer. We're like with investigations, we knew that it would be cheaper to print it even if we went to like Office Max, but we didn't have that option because it's copyrighted.
So I'm guessing those teacher editions are probably the most expensive component.
That and the professional development.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do the licenses need to be renewed every year?
Yeah, the online student licenses will need to be renewed if we want them to have the online access.
Part of our thinking is for this first year of implementation that we want to go into it purchasing both the online and the handbook version. And then after we go throughout this year, we'll get feedback from our teachers, from our kids, our parents, and then perhaps we make a decision going forward about choosing one or the other rather than doing both going forward.
And briefly, Susan, can you tell us about the timeline for professional development?
Yeah. So if it's approved tonight, we start professional development on Monday in a building. So we've already set it up for our sub usage around the district. We're going to do 2 hours. I'm going to each building and do 2 hours with each grade level, mainly because the teachers have a lot of questions and they are excited and also wondering what this is going to look like. So start to just kind of ease into answer all those questions. What do you do with your investigations materials? What is coming to you? What does this resource look like? Show them some of the videos, get them into the lessons so that they can leave this summer and feel like they have some idea. And we can actually access it already on Clever, so that's great that they will have access to the online stuff right away. And then after that, we are offering 3 days this summer, actually 5 days this summer, but 3 specific to illustrative math, where we're going to bring in, one of the days we're going to bring in some, hoping to bring in some teachers from surrounding districts who are using it to do some of the professional development. And then everyone in one of their August PD days will have professional development from Imagine Learning. And then continue. I mean, that's not it, but that's as far as my brain's gotten so far.
We have time set aside in November and then again in January on our already scheduled district PD days, time dedicated to continue the conversation related to the math resource.
I just have a couple of questions. First, thank you so much for all of your work for all of this. I noticed in the committee members, the teachers that were on the committee were the upper grades of elementary school. Was that for intentional?
That was not intentional. It was available to anyone to join the committee. So we had a number of primary teachers who were on the program evaluation committee. So they were on board with making a change, but none of them signed up to be on this committee. And that's why when we went to Clayton, we specifically looked at kindergarten, first and second grade classrooms. And I spent a lot of time in the kindergarten classrooms because I knew we didn't have that representation on the committee. But yeah, that's
Okay.
a good noticing.
I was just wondering, maybe math got more complex in those older grades. So, and then kind of along those same lines, when you get to your implementation plan, will the same teachers in the committee be involved in developing that implementation plan, or other teachers?
Yeah, they already started, so they're the ones who gave feedback that they think it would be important for us to have professional development before we even leave for the summer, and gave some feedback on what that PD would look like this summer, and then kind of some ideas on what rollout could look like for a K-5, because this is a big, to roll out for 6th grade levels at one time is a pretty big undertaking. Yeah. And then we had people who weren't just on the committee, but did volunteer to pilot in their classroom, and so they're going to be a great resource as well. But yeah, I think they're pretty excited about being part of that. We have an implementation team that they could sign up for this summer to help just prepare anything that will help make it easier for the teachers. A lot of that is organization. How do you organize manipulatives and games?
Yeah. Great, thank you. And then, maybe I missed this, but the plan is to implement in classrooms next school year, right?
Yes.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
thank you.
I just have one more. Is there an annual cost to the curriculum, the math curriculum, and how does that compare to this?
Oh, right now?
Yes.
Yeah, so there is a cost to investigations. I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe it's $43 per student, and it goes up every year for our workbooks.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, building principals already have that in their annual budget and have for years. And so while there may be a slight variation in what that amount is, they're very much used to ordering and preparing to order those math workbooks each year.
All right, if there's no further questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the agreement with Imagine Learning for the 23-24 school year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you again for being here and for your presentation. And moving on to the K-12 Gifted Service Program Evaluation, Dr. Washington.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to present. I'm going to share about the gifted program evaluation that has taken place over the year. The team consisted of 4 elementary teachers, middle school teacher, 2 high school teachers, 2 central office administrators, 1 building administrator, 1 special school district administrator, a counselor, a social worker, 4. Can you hear me now? Okay. Is that better? Okay. 4 parents and the director, the gifted director from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. 4 members of the committee are also gifted specialists in the district. We had 4 meetings, 1 full day and 3 half-day meetings. The evaluation also consisted of members doing site visits within the school district as well as in surrounding school districts to visit gifted spaces. We came up with what we believe in through this process. Gifted services are a needed level of support, allowing students to apply their knowledge and skills in complex, critical, and creative ways so that they can continue to develop academically, creatively, social-emotionally, and be contributing members of society. The district's dedication to meeting the needs of gifted learners is manifest through the personnel and the financial support given to those who receive gifted services. and the level of district and community support, along with teacher passion and expertise in gifted education, are facets that provide our school district with a strong foundation for gifted programming. We examined the definitions of gifted. I'll go over the state definition. Section 162.675, Missouri defines gifted children as those children who exhibit precocious development of mental capacity and learning potential as determined by competent professional evaluation to the extent that continued education growth and stimulation could best be served by an academic environment beyond that offered through a standard grade level curriculum. In our district, we offer gifted services at the elementary level as a pull-out program, at the middle school, gifted social studies, and at the high school, students participate in gifted English. This is a diagram of, we call them the MOGLOs, but it's Portrait of a Gifted Learner. It entails the academic, social, and emotional needs of gifted learners that gifted educators through the state of Missouri created a couple of years ago. And we embed these MOGLOs into our district's gifted program. Oftentimes there are questions about what makes a gifted learner, and this highlights the distinction between high achieving students as well as gifted learners. Some of the characteristics are overlapping, but this really highlights some of the unique characteristics of the gifted learners that we service in our district. I'd like to point out specifically that the social emotional needs of students, gifted learners, as well as support with their executive functioning are tremendous component of what is provided through gifted programming, as well as the academic support. Another thing that makes gifted students and learners unique is their asynchronous development, which basically you could look at one particular student and they have a very high vocabulary, but they might struggle with logical reasoning or math skills. And so being able to meet the diverse neurodivergent as well as asynchronous development is really important through gifted services. Also, there's sometimes an assumption that gifted learners are always high achieving students, and that is not accurate. So some gifted learners need additional support with academic success. We have some students that need additional support with being motivated and task completion. Within our district, we have two gifted programs: the academic gifted program, which entails push-in lessons facilitated by the gifted specialist to students in grades K, 1, 2, and 4. We have a universal screening, which we administer to all students in grades 2 and 4. It is the Naglieri General Ability Test. Since our last program evaluation, we shifted from the COGAT to the Naglieri General Ability Test. And just recently, literally last week and this week, we are administering the universal screening to students in grade 1 with the goal of evaluating them in a more timely manner so that services can be delivered in the fall of 2nd grade versus in the spring of 2nd grade. We also take a look at the NWEA scores for students in grades 6 and 8 to see if students are performing at the 95th percentile or higher in reading and math. We complete evaluations throughout the school year, and gifted services begin in grade 2. Elementary services are called Project Plus. We have gifted social studies at the middle school, and at the high school we have gifted English, gifted ACT Lab, and seminar. It is important to note that our services do allow students who are identified as twice exceptional or who have neurodiverse needs to also be met through gifted programming. And again, reiterating the social emotional lessons that are embedded within our gifted curriculum. Our second gifted program within the district is Gifted Fine Arts. We call it GFA for short. And it is available to students in grades 3 through 8. Evaluations take place annually in February, and they are facilitated by professional artists in the region. This is quite a unique experience because we have professional dancers, filmmakers, artists who come in and evaluate the students to determine placement. Students in grades 3 through 5, they meet weekly for 150 minutes a week, or 150 minutes. And students in middle school can elect to take Gifted Fine Arts for one entire semester or the entire year, and it is offered for one class period each day. We were able to gather data by disseminating surveys to different populations within our community. We received 268 responses from students already identified in the program, 49 Gifted Fine Arts students, 19 district staff, and 138 community members. From these responses, we were able to generate our celebrations as well as our recommendations, which I will get to after I talk about current research. We looked at current research and best practices within the gifted realm, specifically the National Association for Gifted Children, which produces a State of the States report, which highlights gifted programming and best practices for every single state as well as nationally. Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and their recommendations and research for what gifted programming looks like in the state of Missouri. I want to note that when you have time to peruse, I would encourage you to take a look at the Fordham report, which in-depthly discusses equitable practices within the gifted realm. Specifically, they created 36 recommendations, which we looked at as a committee. The Davidson Institute is another source where we were also able to examine for best practices. Looking at our equity considerations, our district actually is making strides for identifying gifted students, but for far too long in the United States, we have neglected and wasted an enormous amount of human potential, much of it among groups that have never been given the opportunity they deserve. And we're talking about bright students, advanced learners, striving pupils, and those with high untapped potential, especially those who are Black, Hispanic, Native American, low income, or from otherwise marginalized backgrounds. And so this is noted in that Fordham report. Some other suggestions that we specifically looked at from the report are highlighted. I will say that we currently are administrating the universal screening, and we also are using local norms, which allows us to look at the demographics within the Webster Grove School District. That gives us the most accurate picture of how our students are performing and those that should be further evaluated for services. Also continuing internal gifted testing completed by licensed district faculty versus private testing, which we no longer do. Some of the celebrations that were highlighted, the updated universal screening that I mentioned, and it is modeled by other districts within the state. They look at the model that we have in our district. We have increased equitable identification practices. We have experienced gifted certified and gifted fine arts teachers that offer support to our students. And we have a very unique gifted fine arts program. It is the only one in the state that services students in grades 3 through 8. Most gifted fine arts programs services students at the high school or the higher education level. And our gifted fine arts program focuses on music, visual arts, drama, and dance. So we are very appreciative to have this offered and available to students. Since our last program evaluation in 2018-2019, we've increased communication about gifted services and programming. Again, I will reiterate the social emotional support and resources that we provide to gifted students as well as their families. And this is especially important and came out through all of the surveys from the students at every level, that the students feel supported by gifted programming and their gifted teachers. So I think that speaks volumes. Moving on to recommendations. To provide annual or biannual professional development for all teachers, administrators, and staff focused on specific gifted topics. And these were just a few of the topics, but the rationale is so that everyone is current on how to meet the needs of gifted learners. To develop a plan to support general education teachers with meeting the needs of gifted learners, specifically creating a resource hub that teachers can access for additional materials to enrich their students, support with differentiation, and for the gifted department to collaborate with the other general education teachers during CLTs, which take place during our late start Mondays. To continue to improve our communication plan, this was something that came out through several of the community surveys, but to offer a multimedia system to inform all stakeholders. We know that everyone receives communication differently, but instead of only using our website, our gifted page on our website, tapping into family members to find out what is the best way that they would like to receive information about gifted programming and services, so that there's more of a two-way communication and exchange. Reestablishing a gifted family or affinity group for families of caregivers as well as family members to come, whether we have guest speakers, and offering additional resources to families in the community related to giftedness. Examine the elementary gifted resources so that they align with Portrait of a Gifted Learner and best practices in gifted education, and to develop defined learning progressions that align with Portrait of a Gifted Learner. That was the portrait that I showed you earlier on the slide for elementary gifted students. To develop defined learning progressions for the gifted fine arts students, and define and create project management skills for the gifted fine arts students. Some smaller recommendations also came out of the committee. Communicate and explain the acceleration process and PEGS program to all staff, and include this information on the gifted page of the district website, so that there is transparent understanding and transparent communication and understanding about how students are deemed if they are to qualify for a program outside of our district and what those criteria entail. These are some things that the committee felt that we need to consider. To further develop student support systems, a designated counselor to support middle and high school gifted learners as they transition from the building. So 5th graders transitioning to middle school, and then 8th graders transitioning to ninth grade at the high school. So currently, the gifted staff, we meet and we have conversations about students to ensure that we are meeting their needs as they transition and that the incoming teachers who are receiving them can best support them. But having a counselor or a designated counselor assigned to those students would be tremendous. Summer enrichment offerings, a gifted learner digital portfolio for students so that as students matriculate, the portfolio would transfer with them from grade to grade and they could keep their work in that portfolio. Talent development or multi-tiered support to students not identified as gifted. This is a conversation that comes up often as to how do we support some of those high-achieving students that do not qualify for services under our district and state criteria. And then more collaboration with the Chelsea Center and Thrive. We do some collaboration, but increasing that. The next consideration, we actually have put that into action. Administering the universal screening to first grade. Began academic gifted services in second grade at the beginning of the second trimester instead of in the spring at the third trimester. Continue to examine demographics and test data annually to ensure all subgroups are being identified for gifted services, and continue to have licensed district staff administer tests that warrant gifted services. Next steps entail to develop a district professional development plan to address the recommendations, work with the gifted department and administration to implement these recommendations, examine the gifted page on the district website to determine what components need to be added, modified, or removed based upon these recommendations. Oh, that was quick. Any questions?
I have one question, and you probably addressed it. I just may have missed it. In some of the professional development that you guys are talking about, is there going to be a component in there for teachers? God bless them, they're already doing so much. To maybe recognize students that may not already be identified as gifted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thanks for asking. So oftentimes teachers do have questions about how do they meet the needs of diverse learners, particularly those that are high achieving that may not be identified as gifted. They might excel in specific areas, specific core subject areas, and all of the coordinators, including myself, our role is to support the teachers on how to differentiate instruction so they feel supported on meeting the needs of all their learners.
I just have a comment. I just wanted to thank you very much for showing the difference between gifted and high achieving students, because I think, from a parent's perspective, there's a lot of confusion there. So it's really good to see what the difference is, that you can have a high achieving student, but that student might not be gifted, but it doesn't mean they're not high achieving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have you seen that the universal screener might help recognize more historically underrepresented students to help identify them and bring them into the gifted program? Because I've always been interested in making sure that the gifted students, that population mirrors the population in our schools.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, the universal screening, the purpose of it is to make sure that we are looking at all students. And so prior to our district administering the universal screening, families or teachers could nominate students to be further evaluated. And what we realized is that we were missing students. Not all students, specifically students within certain subgroups, were not being nominated, thus they were not being evaluated, thus they were not being identified and receiving services. So the universal screening actually mitigates that and allows us to look at all students. And my area of research and background is actually identifying students that are within different subgroups. And so Webster, fortunately, is on the cutting edge of participating in some of those research studies. When we implemented the COGAT, we were, that was about 6 years ago, we were one of the first local districts. The Naglieri General Ability Test, we actually piloted that last year, and we were one of 3 districts in the region to pilot that. The IQ test, which we administer in the different indices, we were the first in the nation to be given those norms and implement those indices, which are now being modeled by other districts in the state. So we take it very seriously that we look at all students, particularly those students that fall within different subgroups. And yes, the universal screening does capture those students that were otherwise not nominated or recognized.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I also just wanted to appreciate the fact that we have gifted services and classrooms all the way through, I think it's 12th grade,
Yes.
right? To have that in
Yes.
our high school is really remarkable, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just sort of,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I had curiosity, just kind of piggybacking off of Christine's question. Did you see a shift in the number of students identified with the changes in how we identified kids?
For the universal screening? Yes, so with the universal screening, specifically for the Naglieri General Ability Test, it is a language-free test, which is why we shifted from the COGAT to the Naglieri. And what that means is that students do not have to listen to any audio. Everything is language-free, so they're basically looking at images. So it removes some of the barriers that were, I shouldn't say barriers, but it eliminates any barriers for students who may not speak English as their first language, or who have other processing speed issues or learning issues. And so we find that the language-free is the most equitable assessment, and yes, it has identified students that we did not recognize from our other universal screening.
thank you, Dr. Washington, for all your work on this. Very much appreciated. Going back to sort of that list and thinking about those social emotional components of those students. I know those needs are sometimes very high, speaking from personal experience. Some of those are the most important part of what someone can get out of the gifted experience. How are you balancing, or how are you thinking about that balance between all of those things you're trying to help those students with? Particularly, I think now coming out of COVID, how some of those social emotional experiences might be even more exaggerated than they were 5 years ago. Was that part of your consideration as you're thinking about this evaluation, and how did you guys process that?
Thanks for asking. So yes, there are a lot of components that we looked at. We actually use this document as our guide for the curriculum that we deliver to students. It looks differently at every single level. The social emotional aspect, or the affective aspect for gifted learners, is actually a tremendous part of the curriculum. And so it does entail cooperative learning, team challenges in which they have to work together. There are some students that prefer to work independently, but being able to have those communication skills and the flexibility and the comfort to work within a team dynamic is critical, because you could have the talents, you could have the gifts, but our role is to support students so that they can use those talents and gifts to be productive. And so through the programming and through the lessons, academically as well as in gifted fine arts, the role is to ensure that students are being not only successful but also productive, and that they have those communication skills so that they can work and get along with others effectively. And we have noticed, some students, all students struggled after the pandemic. But specifically, we have noticed that some of our gifted learners had additional challenges. And so just having that certified staff to meet their needs is really critical. So I am very appreciative that our district supports having gifted services at every single level.
Thank you.
I just have one question. So we used to have Project Plus, and then we had the Wings program. Do we still have Wings, or is that completely gone?
Thanks for asking. We no longer have the Wings program. From our prior evaluation that took place in 2018, 2019, it was determined that Wings, which actually was an enrichment program, was not a part of our state gifted criteria. And so we shifted from having Wings, which was more of, it started as a teacher-selected program, to students who were evaluated under gifted criteria and maybe didn't meet the state gifted criteria. They would receive Wings services, but it wasn't consistent within every building. And so because it was more building-based versus district-based, the last program evaluation recommended that we not have that program. We now have enrichment, or Enrichment for All, which is a program that is taught by 2 teachers in our district, and they work with every single student. They go to every class, and they do coding and other enriching activities. They do 10 to 12 lessons within every classroom, K through 5. So we felt that would be a more equitable practice in which all students, K through 5, would benefit.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you for your time.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And there's no...
Jason, do you want to stand or sit? Okay.
There's no presentation.
All right, the LED lighting project.
Okay. I am requesting approval from the Board of Education to execute an agreement with STL LED. They will remove existing incandescent and fluorescent lights and provide and install LED lights at Hickson, Bristol, Hudson, and Givens. The work will take place this summer. STL LED will apply for Ammon rebates on the district's behalf, and rebate checks will be sent back to the district. We did advertise this for 2 weeks in the newspaper, as well as published the bids on BidNet Direct. 2 vendors performed walkthroughs, but STL LED was the only vendor to provide pricing. We originally budgeted $107,000 for this project. The bid for STL LED came in at $85,151. My recommendations for the board to approve an agreement with STL LED. And this will be coming from funds from the operating budget.
Thank you. Any questions? Good.
All right, I'll motion to approve an agreement with STL LED for the cost of $85,151.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we are now ready for consent agenda.
I'll motion to approve consent agenda items 6.02, 6.03, 6.04, 6.05, 6.06, 6.07, 6.08, 6.09, 6.10, 6.11, 6.12, 6.13, 6.14.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn, sine die.
Sine die.
It's not what you said.
So moved.
All those in favor?
I was the first.
I thought you motioned. Did you motion?
I s-
Both did at the same time.
oh.
You can take it, Kristen.
I didn't.
I
Oh,
second
you
it.
said it? Well, I can't, I didn't hear anything.
I didn't.
All
say
those in
anything.
favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Sherry got what she needs. All right.
That was all you, Tara.
We just, all right, yay.
We keep recording.
We always say sign die.
It's American, it's Sunday.
Sign that. Sign that.
Especially if it's Missouri.
The board reorganizes tonight with the installation of directors Keita Quinn and Christine Keller. Ms. Quinn, we'll start with you. This is the oath of office for you to say and sign for the board record. If you can repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of school director
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of
school director
school director
in and for the school district of Webster Groves, County of St. Louis, State of Missouri,
in and for the city of Webster Groves, County of St. Louis, State of Missouri,
to the best of my ability according to law.
to the best of my ability according to law.
Thank you. Congratulations. Ms. Keller, this is the
Yes.
oath of office for you to say and sign for the board record.
Thank you.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of school director
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the school director in and for the school district.
in and for the school district of Webster Groves, County
In and for
of
the school
St.
district
Louis,
of Webster Groves, County of St. Louis,
State of Missouri,
State of Missouri,
to the best of my ability according to law.
to the best of my ability according to law.
Thank you. Congratulations. We will now complete the board's reorganization with the board nominating and electing its officers. The first election this evening will be for board president. Nominations are now open for board president.
I nominate Alan Todd to be the board president.
Are there any other nominations? Mr. Todd, do you accept this nomination?
I do.
Do I have a second? Okay, the election will be conducted by a roll call vote. Mr. Todd?
Yes.
Ms. Shear?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Dahl?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Dr. Lee?
Yes.
Congratulations. The next election this evening will be for board vice president. Nominations are now open for board vice president.
I'll nominate Alex for board vice president.
Any other nominations? Mr. Khan, do you accept this nomination?
Yes.
Do I have a second? Who was? Okay. So the roll call vote, Mr. Todd?
Yes.
Ms. Shear?
Yes.
Ms. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Dahl? Yes. Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Khan?
Yep.
Dr. Lee?
Yes.
It passes 7-0. Congratulations. I will now hand it over to the new board president for the nominations for secretary and treasurer.
Thank you, Sherry. The nominations are now open for the position of board secretary.
I nominate Keita Quinn for board secretary.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Hearing none, do I have a second? Second. All those in favor, roll call vote. Oh, do you accept?
I do accept, yes. Yes.
I wasn't going to give her a choice, apparently. Roll call vote, Sherry? Yes.
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 Yay. The next election is for treasurer. The nominations are now open for treasurer.
I nominate Pam. Sorry.
Any other nominations? Say I'm not. Instead of accepting, Pam may have run away. Don't have to accept. Okay. We don't have to vote on her. Let's go ahead and vote to keep it consistent. Do I have a second? We'll give her one more second. Hi, Pam. Thank you, Pam. Roll call vote, Sherry?
Mr. Todd?
Yes.
Ms. Shear?
Yes.
Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Dahl?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Lee?
Yes.
Congratulations, Pam. All right, that is the last item on our agenda. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned.